Hi, welcome. This is the first lecture for the class CS112, which is Introduction to JavaScript. And in the first module, we are going to start with Introduction to Web Development. And this is from your textbook. I mean, all the contents are taken from your textbook, which is Murak JavaScripts and jQuery 4th edition. So, let's start with the first chapter and we do some introduction to the web development. So we present here the background concepts, terms and skills that you might need for developing JavaScript applications. That includes a very quick review of the HTML and CSS skills that you need throughout the course, and a tutorial on how to use VS Code, which is the source code editor that we are going to use for this class. Now, if you have some web development experience, then you can go through this chapter very quickly and you can basically skip a lot of introductory concepts. So these are the course objectives that we are going to apply here. So we will be using the Chrome to run JavaScript applications. Then we will use Chrome's developer tool to find the JavaScript statement that caused an error. We'll use IDE like the VS Code for the development, and if you are using an IDE or text editor such as VS Code that lets you run a web applications from it, then your IDE or text editor to run an application. Okay, so I mean there are multiple objectives. The slides are available, so please go through the objectives, and it will be clear that what we are going to learn in this chapter. So let's without much wasting of time, we can directly go to the component of the web application. So you can see that a web application has the clients and a web server. So the clients are the computers, the tablets, some devices. Basically the clients are the devices. We can say computer, tablets, mobile devices, we can call them as devices. And these devices use the web application. They access the web pages through web browsers. The web server holds the files that make up a web application. A network is a system that allows clients and servers to communicate. The internet is a large network that consists of many smaller networks. In a diagram like the one you see here, the cloud basically represents the network or internet that connects the clients and servers. Now, in order to start our discussions, networks can be categorized by a local area network. That is a small network of computers that are near each other and can communicate with each other. And computers in a local area network or LAN are typically in the same building or adjacent buildings. This type of network is often called an intranet. By contrast, an wide area network or WAN consists of multiple LANs that have been connected to pass information from one client to another client. A router, you are familiar with router, right? The box that you use to get the internet access, get the Wi-Fi configured, all those cool things. The router determines which network is closest to the destination and sends the information over the network. A one WAN can be owned privately by one company or it can be shared by multiple companies. And then internet service providers, though that is an entity that owns a one that is connected to the internet. So these are the main terminologies that are basically that we will be revolving around in this chapter. So next point is how do you process a static web page. Static web page means these are the static contents. I mean simple web HTTP content. There is no dynamicity there, no change in over time. There is no on the fly changes. So basically a static web page, the definition of a static web page is very simple. This is one that does not change each time it is requested. This type of web page is sent directly from the web server to the web browser, then the browser requests it. So you can see here there is a HTTP request and HTTP response. The terms related to static web pages are very simple. I mean the HTML language, hypertext markup language, the language of the web. Then you have the static web page as a whole. Then HTTP request, the one that your web browser makes to the server, and then the response, server sends the response back, and then on the web browser you render, I mean this process renders a page. So but the dynamic web page, such as, I mean something called, I mean something you are familiar with, the Amazon.com, you can see that it is kind of it's a dynamic web page. And you can see that I mean the information changes there. So the for the dynamic web page, depending on the, I mean surroundings, depending on the requirement, uh, so it changes. So the program or script is executed by an application server based on their data that is sent along with the HTTP request. In this example, the HTTP request, the example that I show here, HTTP request identifies the book that's shown. Then the program script retrieved the image and data for that book from a database server. Okay, and the diagram in this figure shows how a web server processes a dynamic web page. The process begins with the user requests a page in the web browser. To do so, the user can either type the URL in the top. You see the address space, the URL of the page, and I mean they can do that. Uh, and then click the link, or they can click a link that specifies the dynamic page to load. So then the page loads, it takes all the information from the database, and finally the page loads up into the browser. So this is how you load a dynamic page. So you have a web browser, then you have a web server. You are still making an HTTP request to web server, but then there is a lot of things happening behind the scene. The web server talks to the application server, server talks to the database server, and then the data is extracted from the database server, it is served to the web server, and then the web server sends the HTTP response back with the markup language format to the web browser. So basically that's how a dynamic web page works. So why it is called dynamic? Because it depends on data. It's driven by data. That's why it is called dynamic. So I mean there are multiple examples you can find across the book. Now, so what we should do, that we should try to understand how we can use JavaScript for the client side processing. In contrast to server side processing that's done by dynamic web pages, JavaScript is a scripting language that provides for client side processing. Remember this, JavaScript is a client side processing utility. There is nothing in the server side going on with the JavaScript. Everything is on the client side. So you can see this picture. So JavaScript is used to change the images that are shown without using server side processing. So here these are the changes. I mean your page is loaded, and then you want to switch from one one color to another color. You have to click certain buttons, but then This is all done by JavaScript, and this is absolutely happening on the client side, you know. So in order to, how does it work? So in order to make it work, all of the required images are loaded into the browser's cache when the page is requested. If the user clicks on one of the color switches below a shirt, the shirt image is changed to the one with the right color. This is called image swap. Similarly, if the user moves the mouse over a shirt, the image showing the front of the shirt is replaced with the image showing the back of the shirt. It is called image rollover. The diagram you can see clearly shows how JavaScript processing works. When a browser requests a web page, the HTML and related JavaScript are returned to the browser by the web server. Then the JavaScript code is executed in the web browser by the browser's JavaScript engine. This takes some of the processing burden off the server and makes the application run faster. Often JavaScript is used in conjunction with dynamic web pages. So, I mean, does JavaScript only do the image swaps and rollovers? No, there are many other uses of the JavaScript. The another common use is to validate the data that the user enters into an HTML form before it is sent to the server for processing. This is called data validation, and that saves unnecessary trips to the server. Other common uses of JavaScript are to run slideshows and to make asynchronous requests to the server without doing a full round trip. Okay, and over time actually the programmers they build JavaScript libraries that contain code that makes it easier to do these and other common functions. One popular library is jQuery, which I mean, we will touch base about the jQuery in this course. So I mean, we are now going over a little bit of history of the JavaScript development, the versions and releases of the ECMAScript specification. So what is ECMAScript? The JavaScript programming language is based on ECMAScript specification. Over the years, there have been many changes to this specification. Now you can see, I mean, the initial version of the JavaScript was released by Netscape in 1995 and released as a part of Netscape Navigator web browser early in 1996. In response, Microsoft developed a similar language called JScript and released it as a part of Internet Explorer web browser in 1996. Since there were difference between two scripting language, Netscape JavaScript to the European Common Manufacturer Association, or ECMA, to develop a standard. The standard called the ECMAScript specification, and the first version was released in June 1997. Since then, several versions have been released as shown in this picture. So you can see the evolution of JavaScript. And the in June 2015, for example, they released I mean, they released sixth version of the ECMAScript, or ES specification, and at the same time the committee in charge of the specification changed how it would release new versions going forward. Instead of having a set specification that they would release when all the features was completed, they moved to yearly releases of the features that has been approved to that point. So it becomes more kind of agile. The I mean, it's now yearly release rather than a numbered version release. So in the ES5, for example, it allows you to run in the strict mode. It adds several methods that make it easier to work with arrays and objects. I mean, you can go through different specification of ECMAScript and learn a lot. Uh, so I mean, you can you can consult your textbook, uh, or you can just do some research online. So that way you will find a lot of information. The So basically the strict mode, we see the word strict mode. It is a way to opt in or to a restricted variant of JavaScript. So it implies opting out of sloppy mode. Strict mode isn't just a subset, it intentionally has different semantics from normal code. Browsers not supporting strict mode will run strict mode code with different behaviors from browsers that do. So do not rely on strict mode without feature testing for support for the relevant aspects of strict mode. So it's a specification. So basically strict mode is nothing but specification, and it is you can use the keyword use strict. That's a directive, I mean, in order to use new that was introduced from ECMAScript version 5. So that's about the strict mode. You can use strict mode is on all of your programs. It helps you to write cleaner code, like preventing you from using undeclared variables. Strict is just a string. It's a string and will not throw an error, even if it does not understand it. So if you declare a strict mode, then you cannot just define a variable without defining its type. You know. So you have to when you use strict mode, then you should define the type of the variable. So that's how the strict mode is defined. So go through some of the examples here. The browsers that supports ECMAScript, all modern browsers support ECMAScript. So you can see here. When you install Chrome, of course the latest version is the best. You can use 79 and above and so on. So now we are going to do some real life HTML script, HTML language example. So we are talking about the components of a JavaScript application. So the first thing is the HTML file. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is used to define the content and the structure of a web page. So you can see here the output of the web page with just HTML inside it. The typical code that you are using here is something like this. So you have don't worry about the style sheet. Don't worry about these things. Just this one. This is just simple simple HTML body. So that's what is displayed here. So it starts with, if we go through the detail, you see here that it starts with the doc type declaration, right, in the beginning, in the top. So this declaration is the one that you will use with HTML5, and you must code it exactly as it's shown here. The second is the head section. So the head section of HTML file is they contain the meta components, the meta element that specifies that UTF-8 is the character encoding that's used for the page. After that, there is another meta element that sets a viewport to help the page content in the text that will display in the browsers tab. Finally, there is a HTML comment indicating that any link and styles element go here. So we did not put any style element yet in this page. Now comes the body section. So you have doc type specification under the HTML tag. This says that it's an HTML page, and you have the head head, and then you have the body section. Under the body section, you can see the use of a main element, which is one of the HTML5 elements that we will be using throughout the book. Throughout this course. The body section ends with the HTML command indicating that script elements must go at the end of this section. So if you look at it, you will see this. So at the end of the main, you should put the script, the JavaScript. We did not put anything there yet. So our simple HTML has the doc type specification. It starts with an HTML element, then inside that you have head, you have body, and inside the body you see the main element, which is HTML5 element, and at the end of the main element your script JavaScript will go there, and then you end the body element and the HTML page is just completed. Okay, so that's structure of the HTML, and the output of this code is this one. No style, nothing, no dynamicity, it's a static page. Okay, so now if you include the styling, then your page looks like this. It's very pretty. So what is the style? The link element in the HTML head element that applies to the CSS file is basically what you do here is link, and then you put the style sheet and HTML. So here, if you look at here, this is the actual code link, this one. This is the link and this is the style sheet, and the href means the location is here. So basically this is the style that we have used in this code. Okay, let's move on. So that's the so we got the style elements. Now in the early days of web development, HTML documents were coded so HTML not only defined the content and structure of the web page but also the formatting that content. Today, cascading style sheets or CSS let you separate the formatting from the content and structure of a web page. As a result, you need a web page and CSS separately. Okay, so this is your typical, in this slide actually we show the typical cascading style sheet or CSS. It has the body, it specifies all the font specifications and also the header, the color of the header. So according to this style sheet, the header color should be blue, and there are certain font family that we are using here, and the border size, all the styling things are here. So your output should be just like that. If you come here, your output should look like this. Now the style sheet that named email CSS, email list CSS, that contains this particular specification, and we shared it like here. So you can see the body h1 is blue. You have all the information written here. Okay, so that's the style sheet. That accounts for the style sheet part, the CSS part. And now comes the last part, which is the JavaScript. Okay, so why we use JavaScript here? We use JavaScript just for validation. So for example, here you have the email address. Now if you confirm the email address and miss something, the email does not match. So basically the JavaScript is used here to validate each fields, each requirements. So the script element, it is given in the script part of the code. So basically if you go back here, this is your JavaScript, and the JavaScript code is just like this. So we will go through it, don't worry about it. So this is the JavaScript listing file. So as you see from this picture, you can see here that the code, JavaScript code, consists of mainly four functions. You know, so um, you will learn more about how to code JavaScript in this course. But now just know that this dollar um, parenthesis function gets an element from the page. You know, and then I mean here, for example, um, let me activate the sorry anyways, I cannot activate the pane here, but basically you can see that dollar, and then you have the parentheses, the dollar and parentheses, it basically grabs that section from the code, from the HTML code. So dollar parenthesis function, what is the role of dollar parenthesis function? The answer is dollar parenthesis, and you put some element name there that gets an element from the page. The join list here in the second line of the code, join list, this function executes when the user clicks on the join list button. Okay, so basically you, if you go here, join list, there is a button called join list. So this function, this guy, this join list is displayed, I mean it is clicked, it is executed whenever you click the join list button. Okay, the clear form function executes, there should be a clear form function here. The clear form function executes when you click the clear form button. Okay, so those are the things in the jointly list function. For example, if you go back there, you can see four if else block, if else, I mean four if else blocks that provide most of the logic for this application. Okay, this if else structure is pretty much similar to Java or C++ or PHP, whatever code we can write, it looks like the same. What's different about JavaScript is that, why JavaScript is so distinguished, because it provides methods and properties that let you modify the DOM structure of the HTML, the document that is loaded on your client side. For instance, dollar parenthesis function uses the query selector method to get the first element in the document that matches the CSS selector that passes to the function. Then the first statement in the joint list function uses dollar parenthesis function to get the object that represents the first text box in the HTML. Okay, this statement also uses value property to get the value. Okay, to get the value, the whatever value it is, to get the value, dot value, you can see dot value of that element, whatever value you choose. Let us say the email is xyz@yahoo.com. The when you do dollar email one dot value, then you are basically extracting xyz, I mean not xyz, let's see here, grace@yahoo.com. The when you place dot value, then you are getting this grace@yahoo.com, this particular value. Okay, so those are the details of the JavaScript. Now the clear, also you can see that clear form button, also you can see that dollar email one dot value, it clears all the values. Once you click on the clear, then the value should be reset to blank or nothing, you know. The clear span command, you can do, I mean, like these comments, I mean, these particular values are passed. So basically when you click the clear I mean clear button, clear form function, you should be able to see those text contents. Okay. Now how you can use the HTML semantic elements. All of the applications in this course, we will be using HTML5 semantic elements whenever they are appropriate. If you are not using them or at least familiar with them, then you can see in this particular slide what you need to know. Okay. So um, so these are the HTML semantic elements that you need to know. You need a header, you need the main section, then you have section, you have article, aside, nav, navigation, figure, footer. I mean, those are the HTML5 semantic elements. That's what, I mean, we are going to use throughout this course. So example, you have a page structured with HTML5 element. You have the header, then you have the main section, you have the footer. Okay, and the page should look like this. I mean, you can see the header clearly, then you have the content of the page just like this. Header is H1 Sun, I mean Joaquin Valley Town Hall. Then you have the main, welcome to whatever statement here, and then footer is copyright or whatever company. So it's like that. So that's it. So that's about it. And then the div, and we have encountered the div and span element, right? So div and span element, that is presents. Div means a block element that provides container for other elements. So it is a container, and span is an inline element that lets you identify text that can be formatted with CSS. You have to remember this when you write the code. So example, you have the div and you put the contents here, you put the contents here. I mean, that's pretty much how the div looks like for a JavaScript application. Okay, and then the span is something like this, the inline element. So the basic HTML attributes that we are going to consider in this book are ID for, I mean, div has an ID. Each element should have an ID. The class is basically, it is a representation, implementation of CSS. Then the name, for, title, all these things we are going to use. These are the basic HTML attributes that will be used in our application, in our applications that we will be using in our particular course. So let's do a little bit elaboration. What is ID? ID specifies a unique identifier for an element that can be referred to by CSS. Class is one or more class names that can be referred to by CSS, and the same name can be used for more than one element. The name is the unique name of an element that is commonly used by the server-side code and can also be used by the JavaScript code. For means in a labeled element. This attribute specifies the ID of the control that it applies to. Title is specifies, I mean, this specifies additional information about an element. Okay, so I think we should be able to show you some example. So let's see here. You have the class. I mean, like the class. You are basically defining a class of based on the h2 header, header type 2. Then you have the id. Form has an id. The name, what is the name of the form? This should be unique. If you cannot duplicate the form name. Then the label is for email. This label is for email, and the email is the id. This is an id basically. The label is for email and id is given below. This is the id. The label for this particular input section is email. Okay, so that's how it works. And title is enter email address here. So output should be like this. You can see here that email, this is the, this is qualified by the for, and then you have enter email address here. So it's basically the input type, and inputs, title of this is this one. Okay, two ways to provide the style. You can use an external style sheet by coding a link element. You can do that, or you can embed the style sheet inside the code. I don't recommend embedding style sheet in the head section. This is not a good practice. You should do it in a file so that you can reuse it in multiple places. The sequence in which the styles are applied is that styles from an external style sheet, and then you do the embedded styles. So head element that includes two style sheets. You can see style sheet, you put href and then the relative path. It's not absolute path. You can do like that. The sequence which styles are applied from the first external style sheet to the last. That's the sequence. So HTML can be selected by type, ID or class here. And the CSS style rules that select by type, ID and class, you can see it here as well. So basically this has all these examples. You can simply cut and paste from the slides. I provided you with the slides. So and try to try this code on your on your editor, and try to run it on your browser. That way things will be super easy for you. So so that CSS, that's about the CSS skills. Just read the book about the CSS skills, and you have much better concept about it. I just showed you what to look for. So we are consistently looking at those stuff. So the web page at whenever you run it, it should look like this. So this is the web page, and how do you run it? So here, once you download your code from the book I showed you, once you do that, you just all those information about how to download it, it is given in the previous video. I think it's in the lab 1 video, and you can see how do you download the code from the book. It is also written in the appendix A of the book. So the criteria is use your book as much as possible to get complete understanding. But here, how do you run this code on your Visual Studio Code? Just press on the run button, then you do run without debugging. If you do that, sorry, let me do it again. So you do start without debugging, and that actually run it here. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to install any web server, anything. You can run it just off the box. So here you run it, and then you put the email address, let's say test@yahoo.com. then you put confirm test. If you do test, if you do first name test, and you try to join the list, it will error it out. Okay, So that looks good. Yahoo.com. You can join list. So you have joined the list, and then again you can do these, and you can do test. And if you want to clear the form, it should be like that. Okay. So it runs. I mean, it works out of the box. So the key is to install the Visual Studio Code and try to run it from here, and that will give you the best learning experience throughout the book. Try every application in the book, and that will maximize your learning experience. So, I mean, you should be using the IDE. I mean, that's the best option, but there are other options as well. You can look at the slides and figure out the best way for you. For me, I can tell you that running it from out of an IDE is the best choice for any developer, and I recommend you to do that. Okay. Next, if it is an internet, then you need to get a domain name. You have to then have a server, and then you have to declare a domain name. I mean, first one is the protocol. HTTP is the protocol. Then you put the domain name. Then you have the path. Then you have the file name. There are four parts of the web page. So with the Chrome, you can even you can use a control panel like here. Now, if you go to the developer tool, so here go to the more tools on the three dots here. Just go to the more tool and go to the developer tools. Then you should get a console here. So this is your console, and you can see here. So I mean, you don't see any error anywhere, but if you have any error, you should be seeing that. Okay, so that's pretty much how do you debug your JavaScript from the console itself. Okay. Then how do you open close Chrome's developers tools? To open, you can do Control Shift I. I mean, it's the tools, developer tools. It's simple, right? I mean, that's what I showed you. I'm showing you over again. So let me again pull up the same page. So you go to run without debugging. This is your page. Then go to three dots to the right hand side, click there, go to more tools, and there you have the developer tools, and that will give you everything. Here you get the elements, like you can select any element that you are using here. uh, this is the way you can do it. See, h1 is here, form is here, I mean everything is here, you know. The main is here. The script you don't see as an element, but total body is here. So that's how you can use it. Okay, so that's easy, right? Okay, now how do you find if a JavaScript statement that caused an error? So you need to open console panel by clicking the console tab. I mean, in the previous here, go to run and then run without debugging, and then go to console. So more tool, developer tool, and then go to console here. So on the console tab, basically uh, you should see an error message there along with the line of code that caused the error. So you can click on the link to the right of the error message that indicates the line of the code. Then you can go to the JavaScript code that contains the statement, I mean the error, wherever you get the error. So the sources panel after the link. So if you look at the link further, so explore the link and you have the sources panel. You can see the source, I mean index.html. These everything is there. So whatever you coded there, everything goes to the developer tool. That's the beauty of the Chrome browser. That's why we use it so frequently. So then you have, I'm not going to elaborate it very again and again, because we already discussed in the lab one. So just create the folder, and I mean open the folder from your um, VS Code, and then you are free to code, you know. So so these are all the information. It is in this slide, as well as we discussed it in the lab one. So that's all for this week's content. So please go through the lab 1, lab 1A, and then there is a lab 1B. You need to do that as well. All the instructions are given there, and then you have the quizzes. I think you have everything that you need for week 1. So let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email to my email address. Avoid using the Canvas email, because that's basically, sometimes I don't get to it. That's pretty much it is. And what you should do is that you can send me an email to my email address at lsccd, and also mention the course that you are working on. I mean, if you don't mention the course, I teach one more than one courses, so it's hard for me from the student ID to determine which course we are talking about. Just put the reference of CS112 in the beginning of the email, and that way I will know that you are talking about, you have a question about that particular course, and we can of course set up a convenient office hour, and we can go through that if you have any questions. Don't forget to get the book as soon as possible, and don't forget the coupon code that I was able to negotiate with the publisher for your discount, 20% discount. That makes the book is a as a low cost book in the campus. So if you have any question, let me know. Okay, thank you. Talk to you later.